Pardon the interruption. I'm Chris Gehrz. Sam, what is this online CWC I've been hearing about?
Is that this summer? Welcome to PTI, boys and girls. My name is Sam Mulberry. Let's just jump right into the headlines. CWC, Christianity and Western Culture, is now an online course. Chris, what is CWC all about?
CWC is a one-semester Western Civ course. You might have encountered something like this. Sometimes it gets broken up into two. This goes from like 500 BC to I think we stop around 1800 still. We kind of even with online, we're going to press ahead a little bit. So it's a good 2,300 years of history, philosophy, theology, politics, a little art history, some other stuff.
All in 5 weeks?
Yeah, sure, why not? I know, it sounds daunting. It's one of the foundational courses at Bethel, I'd say. I mean, the things that you hear about in CWC you're going to hear about in other courses later on. And some of you might be a little bit further in. You're actually going to hear in the other direction, but that's fine too. So, I don't know, Sam, you've been doing this for 20, how many semesters? I think...
The fall of 1995 was the beginning, so I'm getting close to 20 years in CWC.
So why is this an important class?
This is an important class because this is going to be sort of recapturing Christian memory. That's really our big. That's really the big thing as I look at the course that we're doing. You know, we're going to be sort of tracing a story, a stream of history that we find ourselves swimming in.
Yeah. No, I was reading something today talking about how present-oriented the American public generally is, but especially at the ages like 18 to 22, 24, it's really hard, I know, to care a lot about the past. And I think that's the challenge we take on, is to say, like, the things you're dealing with today, people have encountered before, maybe even, 2,300 years ago or 1,700 years ago in North Africa or something, or in Italy or in France or Sweden. I think that's one valuable thing is partly to just resource our students with a wider and, an older view in some ways.
Right, and I think, the other big question that we look at in the course is how do Christians in the past deal with the culture around them, and we find ourselves as Christians dealing with the cultures around us. Hopefully we're thinking about those questions, and that's one of the big things we're going to be doing in this course.
Yeah, and students, you're going to hear this in the first movie coming up. I mean, that'll be the kind of larger question, what does it mean to be in the world but not of the world, in the West but not of the West, I think is the title we're using. But then there's some other bigger questions. We talk about who am I, who should I be? How do you make meaning of your existence? What does the good life look like? And how do you do that in relationship to other people? And can you even ask that as an individual, or do you have to ask it as a group? And then how do you answer questions like that? What are your sources for truth?
Yeah, I mean, what do you look to? What are your authorities?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, so it's a lot to cover in now 5 weeks online, but I think we've got some...
But what a 5 weeks it'll be.
Oh, it's going to be a great ride. It's going to be so much fun. Let's get right into the online part of it. Sam, to quote you, when they write the history of CWC, what is the chapter on online CWC going to start with? How do we assess this in the grander historical scheme of
things? I was thinking about this, and I think it's either this is sort of a dawn of a new CWC, or a noble failure, one of the two. So you're experiencing or about to experience one of the two. I hope we're more the former than the latter, but we'll see as we go here. You kind of get to be the test patience for this.
Thank you for not using the word guinea pig.
That's right.
No, that I did. I'd lean more in the former. I think we have some sense of what we're doing. That being said, this is like mid-May as we record this. We haven't done this before. We haven't really taught online before, so we're going to be learning kind of alongside you.
Yeah, and I think it's actually one of the things that's going to be interesting about this class is we're people who have a long history in this course and with this course. As 10 years ago, you and I sort of started teaching together in this course, sort of taking kind of ownership of the course, kind of inheriting the course from some faculty who came before us. So in some ways, what we're going to be doing this summer is, I was going to say the culmination of 10 years, but it's that and it's the beginning of a new chapter. So I think we're really excited about the possibilities of what we're going to be doing here.
Yeah, it definitely allows for some things we can't really do face-to-face in semester. And I think it's good because it forces us not to do CWC the way it's always been done. And we kind of started with that. That we're not going to use what we've always had. We're going to try some different things.
So I guess that leads to our next question, which is what's going to be different about CWC? Whether if you've been at Bethel and you've heard of people taking the course, heard people talk about the class, what's going to be different between the face-to-face course, the traditional course, and this summer online course?
Yeah, I mean, I think the staple components of CWC are lectures, usually 2 a week in the face-to-face semesters, small group discussions with 17, 18 students and a professor, usually weekly quizzes, sometimes more often. Those are things that will all be gone, which I think that's why it's a little bit scary for us. That we know how that model works. We know
We're
what
sort
that
of throwing
rhythm
out
is
the
like.
playbook and starting fresh here.
Right. I mean, some things are the same. I mean, there still will be 3 exams. You'll still be writing something at the end that kind of sums up what you've learned and puts.
I think the history is still the history, right?
I think the history is, yeah. I mean, it's still one semester Western Civ, church history course with some theology, some philosophy. I mean, one thing that's different is you'll be getting back some things we haven't been able to do because of staffing. I mean, a lot more, I think, art history, literature, and then some other things that we just don't have time to delve into, because the way we've done it is replaced lectures and the small group discussions with basically 3 things, including this webisode, which we should talk about. One is documentary films. We spent a lot of last summer interviewing about 20 Bethel faculty from different disciplines, including some current and former CWC folks, but then some other people who are like in the sciences or other fields really you wouldn't think connected with.
And that's going to be one of the cool things about the class is that this is going to be a course which in some ways is going to be taught by Chris and I, but it's taught by Bethel at large. I mean, there's about 20 faculty who you're going to interact with quite a bit in this course, and I think that's actually one of the things that I'm kind of most excited about is allowing all of those voices to come together to teach this class.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the trade-off. I mean, a reason we'd hesitate to do this is we don't get the face-to-face encounter with students, and we think that's really important. And so, I don't know if we would do this if we knew that you would never meet another Bethel professor or one of us, but what you do get then is the chance to bring in people who otherwise their schedules won't permit it. And what they're doing then is helping us kind of frame, as we move through the story of CWC, what are the big topics? What is important about what's happening in AD 313 or in AD 1517 or as we come to the end of the course? What does this have to do with Christians living in American culture right now? So the films really serve partly to give you kind of a sketchy outline of here's the story for this piece of the narrative, but it's also to frame it. Why does this all matter? What are the questions we should be thinking about? Why is this controversial? Why is this complicated? So that's a big part of the films. The other piece then that we're excited about is something we've started to experiment with face-to-face, but now we get to do it the whole way through, and that's to have virtual museums. We've done this with art to some extent for a couple of years, but now we're doing it for 2 or 3 for each of the 3 units in the course. So like right off the bat, you're going to have an ancient Greece and Rome museum that you're going to walk into virtually. And in some ways, it's very hands-on. You get to see artifacts, do some readings, watch some more interviews, and go deeper into some of these topics.
And the thing that excites me about the museums, which you'll experience, is that they're nonlinear, right? When you go to a lecture, it goes from point A to point B to point C to point D. Even a creative lecturer, there's still sort of a linear approach to it.
Well, and it's controlled by the instructor.
Well, exactly. Like they're walking you through whatever the story they're telling is. When you get into these museums, you're going to be asked to make some choices. In the same way, if we sort of went to an actual museum and turned you loose, there are corridors that you can go down, things you can look at. You're going to be asked to make some choices on what do you want to spend a little bit more time diving into. And that's actually what I think is really exciting is we can add a lot more that in the face-to-face course we can't always go down all these little rabbit trails. Well, we can at least create them and invite you to go down some of those.
Yeah, I mean, we'll guide you a little bit. There'll be a worksheet for each of the museum days. And about half of it will be kind of common, no matter, everyone will do some of the same questions. But then there'll be a piece, kind of choose your own adventure is a phrase I've often thought about in designing museums. So I think those are the 2 big pieces. We're really excited, slightly nervous, but mostly excited about trying out.
And a little bit tired. I think I have, if you were to walk into my office, there's a little too much caffeine in my office working on some of this stuff. But it's exciting.
Right, the withdrawal is going to be awful.
That's right, I think I'm going through it right now. So.
We're doing just and then one other piece, Sam, why are we doing, we maybe should have started with this, why are we doing this right here, the webisode, I think we're calling it?
Well, I think it actually ties into one of the things that we've been talking about, which is we're kind of curating the information in this course, but we're not you don't see us all the time teaching. We're kind of in the background making this course run. So part of the point of the webisode is for us to have a little bit more direct communication with you, right? A little bit more direct conversation, and it's something we can do in real time. I mean, we're creating these films, and presumably if students take this course next year, some of the films will be the same, some of the museums will be the same, but we're going to be recording these webisodes throughout the 5 weeks, as you're going through the course.
So if we get tanner, you'll know it's true.
That's right.
Except that I don't tan.
Or grayer, one of the 2, right?
Probably both.
So you can chart that, I would think. And I think the big the big piece of that in terms of doing it in real time is this also a chance for you to interact with us. So one of the things we're going to be talking about later on in this episode is how do you interact with this show. We want to really spend this time as a time where we can be answering your questions about the course, about the content in the course. In the face-to-face course, we have a small group where students can come with questions and interact with us. So this is our chance to do that, and I think that's actually going to be hopefully a really important piece of these is how you get to be part of this show as well.
Yeah, so again, some of this will be determined by you as you have questions. I think there'll always be some pieces, though. We've each taught this, you longer than me, but at least a decade. We kind of know what some of the stickier moments are. I mean, we'll talk about.
We'll let you know
Play-Doh.
what questions you should be asking.
That's right. So, and I think it's also just fun. I mean, it's a chance for Sam and I to get to see each other during the summer, which otherwise doesn't always happen a lot.
Okay, now let's get to the other question, which is online CWC easier than the face-to-face course? If maybe you started the face-to-face course and decided, hey, you wanted to try something different, is this going to be easier than the face-to-face course, Chris?
For me, absolutely. I'm looking forward to a real vacation and to make a lot of money off of doing nothing. I think time will tell, right? It's unknown. I think the way I've thought about it is, I think this will play to certain people's strengths more than the face-to-face course will. If you really if Sam said non-linear and you kind of lit up, or the choose your own adventure part, or if you like the idea of being taught by all of Bethel rather than just being stuck with a smaller team, I think that's something that should be really exciting to you. And frankly, that it's still going to be rigorous. You've got a lot of reading to do. You're going to have tests to take. You're going to have writing to engage in. So in that sense, not easier probably isn't the word I would think. But in some ways, maybe if it was hard to sit in a lecture hall in a pretty uncomfortable room for 70 minutes twice a week taking notes, this is just a different way to do it. And one thing I've liked when I've experimented with this kind of stuff before is it also lets you study in different ways or take in information. You can stop the film partway through. You can take it in 5-minute chunks. You can do the whole thing. You can rewatch it. Museum you can visit multiple times. You can even click into this webisode, right, in Flash. And if there's an answer you heard and you didn't quite get it, you can go back through it. So I guess that's my hope, is that it's not necessarily easier, but maybe it actually suits your learning style, or at least for some people, better than face-to-face does.
Right, and I'd say the one thing as I'm sort of conceiving of this class and as we're starting to build modules for it, one thing I would recommend is that this course is going to require you to pay attention.
Mm-hmm.
The videos are shorter than lectures, but when I go through and look at all the content in them, that's something you're going to want to focus on as you're watching. You're going to want to be taking notes as you're watching. We're going to give you some questions to guide you through that, but you need to approach those pretty focused, I think, and paying attention to what you need to be pulling from there, and hopefully kind of letting some of it wash over you too.
Yeah, and I think there's the possible danger. You've got to be pretty self-motivated, self-disciplined. You kind of move ahead at your own pace to some extent with the course. But one thing that's not here is, because it's not face-to-face, you don't have the same kind of accountability. Where you have to show up and you've got to talk to that professor. We can see if you're not... We're trusting that you're watching these films. That's kind of on you to use them well. And I think we like that in theory.
if you're hearing this, so far so good, you're
right.
Still with us.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah. So I'm again mostly excited, slightly nervous, but I think I'm also excited for the face-to-face course. I think we're going to learn things doing this that will really improve the face-to-face course as well.
All right, what we want to do now is to play a game. We hope that I don't know if this is a game that we hope we'll do sort of throughout these, just to kind of try to get in the heads of some of the people that we're studying in this course. Now, obviously, we haven't started the course yet, so it's kind of hard to get into the heads of people we haven't studied yet. So we thought we would sort of, skim across the pop culture landscape and play a little game we like to call Talking Heads. Or Heads on Sticks.
Heads on Sticks.
There you go.
But that doesn't fit on the side of the screen.
That's right. So we're calling it Talking Heads there. But,
okay.
Chris, you're up first.
Okay. Who am I?
Chris, you are President Barack Obama, and the question we want you to answer is, one of the big themes for the course is this idea of the cloud of witnesses. Who is in your cloud of witnesses? So President Obama, who do you find in your cloud of witnesses?
Well, I think the obvious place to start is where the course starts, with Martin Luther King Jr. I think I'd have to admit that I probably wouldn't be where I am if it were not for Martin Luther King Jr., and I really appreciate the famous letter from Birmingham jail that this course starts with. thinking through what it means to be a Christian who lives in the world without being of it, thinking through why Christians should seek to do social justice and care about whether a law is just or unjust, and really encouraging Christians to not just be this, I think he calls it a thermometer taking the temperature, but actually a barometer, right? Or a thermostat. Is that
Thermostat, that's right.
A
barometer would just take the pressure.
That's right. I mean, actually changing and putting pressure on society and maybe challenging and provoking in some ways. I also have to say, I don't know if people know this, but I came to my Christian faith as a member of the United Church of Christ, which is a denomination that distantly at least goes back to the Calvinist Reformation in Geneva, Switzerland in the 1540s. I don't know how often the UCC talks about this, but I have to say, as I read the John Calvin piece you have on being faithful to your divine calling, I can resonate, I can nod along with the idea that you can be called to a life in politics, he talks about. And he says, whatever you're calling, there's nothing so dull or dirty that it can't glorify God. And I guess I'm kind of taken with Calvin's pretty optimistic view. The Christians, face a lot of challenges in their cultures, but they can have an impact. They might be able to transform the values of the culture around them. So I will see Martin Luther King Jr. and John Calvin.
Chris, who am I?
Sam, you are Olympic swimmer Ryan Lochte / reality TV star Ryan Lochte, correct?
Well, I guess I wanted to start by saying, Chris, thank you for having me on the show. I just want to tell you and all of your viewers out there, watch What Would Ryan Lochte Do? 10:30, 9:30 Central on the E Network. It's going to be the smash hit of the summer.
And hit record now.
That's right. As I'm thinking about my cloud of witnesses, people that were studying in this course, I'm really drawn to the Greek philosopher Socrates.
Sure, I believe.
Because I'm not known as somebody of sort of great intellectual abilities. I'm a swimmer, but people look down at me. In fact, I'm starting to think that maybe this whole E thing is a joke on me, but I'm not sure about that.
How would you know? I don't know.
Well, you should watch 10:30, 9:30 Central
right.
this summer on E.
Thanks.
So I'm really drawn to Socrates because I heard somebody say once that Socrates was the most brilliant philosopher, and the thing that made him brilliant was that he knew he didn't know anything. And I'm pretty sure I don't know much of anything, so I think I'm sort of like Socrates in that way. I'm a Socratic swimmer.
Well, I am going to watch. That's amazing. What time again?
10:30, 9:30 Central on
what?
E. On E, What Would Ryan Lochte Do?
All right. Okay, Sam, who am I?
Chris, you are recording star Taylor Swift.
Oh my gosh, I can't believe I won Entertainer of the Year. Why do people keep giving me these awards? I've got to thank my mom. She's been with me this whole way. My dad, and all the fans. Thank you for voting, everyone. Where's the award?
Taylor, who's in your cloud of witnesses? There is no award.
This isn't the CMAs?
This is not the
This is not the Grammys?
PTI, CWC
AMAs?
PTI. Lots of letters, no award.
AMCs?
No.
Who's my cloud of witnesses? Oh, you mean from Hebrews 12:1.
Yes.
Right. I understand now. You wouldn't think that I'd have someone in my cloud of witnesses, but I have got to say I am really drawn to the story of Perpetua. She was a woman in North Africa who was alive around 200 AD or so, and she was martyred by the Romans. She was persecuted for her faith. And I'm really drawn to her because she was about my age. I think she was about 19 or 20, right, when she died. And she kept a diary, just like I keep a diary. But I write songs about it. She died instead. So I am really super hyper.
Are you saying she would have been better off as a songwriter?
If they had it back then. I don't know if they had it back then. I have not taken CWC, Sam. But yes, Perpetua from, I think she dies in 203 AD. You might run into her soon in this class.
Was she the 202 Best New Artist winner or anything like that? Is there any other ways that you connect with her?
I think she had hair very similar to this, but records are sketchy from the time.
That works. Chris, who am I?
Sam, you are... Wait. You are me.
I am Chris Gehrz. Who do I find in my cloud of witnesses? Well, you spend any time in this course at all or any time talking to me, you know that one word that comes up again and again and again and again and again is pietism. So I sort of fashion myself as one of the leading lights in pietist studies. So I'm going to look back at people like John Wesley, who has this great pietistic, heartfelt conversion experience, right? When he's hearing Luther's preface to Romans read at Aldersgate Street, he says his heart is strangely warmed and filled with this kind of certainty. So I'm really drawn to that type of conversion, that type of Christianity. I also like someone like Blaise Pascal, who's this French mathematician, scientist, a devout Christian, who's kind of trying to wrestle with the idea of how do you deal with your mind and your heart, and how do those things work together. And he's really drawn to the heart. So, pietists like things like that. Then I'm going to throw a little curveball at you. And I'm going to say Ignatius Loyola, because Loyola really dealt with the idea that the unity of the church is a powerful and important idea. And I think that sometimes gets lost in sort of modern Protestantism, is this idea of unity. So I'm going to put him in my cloud of witnesses as well.
Wow, I'm sorry, I wasn't paying attention. I was gazing into my own eyes. What does that say?
How old is this picture of you?
My goodness, that's from, I think that's my last pair of glasses. So it was around when I got married, 2006.
All right.
You can tell I don't have any gray in my hair at that point.
That's right. And last one.
Sam, who am I?
You are me.
Boy, that was predictable. So, how old is this picture?
That's a pre-9/11 picture. That goes back to August of 2001.
Do these expire at some point?
No.
Are you forced to update? Who is in my cloud of witnesses? I say Mulberry. Well, oddly, you mentioned Blaise Pascal. That actually is a very important person to me, because when I came to Bethel, these many years ago, before I'd ever heard of CWC, I believe I was a computer science major, and I might have actually had to study the language named after Pascal.
I do. I have a book in my office on Pascal, the programming language.
But despite that, I also feel like maybe there's some similarity in that I came to Bethel as a Roman Catholic, and I feel like I became a pietist somewhere along the way. And I think there's something pietistic about Pascal's Catholicism that I still resonate with to some extent. And I do think there's something about the relationship between faith and reason that I still find very compelling. He offers a nice witness on. I would also say that I find Augustine a pretty significant figure, at least in how I've taught the course. I feel like the best lecture that I've given, not to sing my own praises here, but
go ahead.
At least in face-to-face CWC, I got to do this lecture about Augustine's spiritual memoir called The Confessions, which you'll encounter as we go into, I think, both a film and museum. You'll learn more about the Confessions and hear from a variety of faculty why it's so significant. But I'm drawn to the idea from Frederick Buechner, who's a pastor novelist who talks about the importance of telling stories well. And is it The Distant Mirror? I always forget.
Yes, The Distant Mirror.
Okay, so there's something about, Augustine's story that I think is really important, just the power of telling our stories. But also there's something about that story, that resonated with me as I sat there in CWC and as I taught as a TA and as I taught as a professor of, at that stage in my life, wrestling with some of the questions we wrestle with in the course and some of the insecurities that Augustine wrestled with as a young man coming to faith. So I will see Augustine is definitely my cloud of witnesses, and many others, I believe.
All right, it's happy time. Happy 131st birthday to the French cubist Georges Braque. Chris, do you like early 20th century French cubism?
I'll say this: if it ain't Braque, don't fix it.
That works.
Okay. Happy anniversary to Saint Robert Bellarmine or Bellarmine, or we go Italian, Saint Roberto Bellarmino. He is beatified 90 years ago today. And again, this is May 13th as we're recording. Bellarmine, I think, is best known for playing a role in persecuting the Italian scientist Galileo and for playing a role in a cartoon that we did about the persecution of Galileo. Which
it's on YouTube, folks. Look it up.
You didn't think that sentence would show up in this webisode, but it did.
And finally, happy trails to Professor Kevin Craig, one of the creators of CWC, one of the founders of the course, who taught the course from the mid-1980s up until the spring of 2012. Kevin's retiring from Bethel, and he will be dearly missed in lots and lots of ways. Chris, do you have a favorite Kevin Craig moment or story?
Boy, it's hard to beat Kevin putting on a whipple and playing a nun. That's very hard to beat. And that he would know to call it a whipple, too, but he would. He knows headgear. I think Kevin was probably my first impression of Bethel and of CWC in many ways, and you're going to encounter him as well. One of the nice things about this course is that even though Kevin's retired, you'll still see him in films and museums. I think there's even a museum named after him, so you'll read more about Kevin Craig at some
And again,
point.
If you want to see Kevin Craig being Kevin Craig, look it up on YouTube. Just do some searches. There's lots of stuff lots of movies Kevin Craig has been in.
Wow, this just turned into a gigantic ad for your YouTube
That's
page.
Right.
Amazing.
And what would Ryan Lochte do? 10:30, 9:30 Central on E this summer. Chris, let's go to the big finish.
Okay. Normally, what would this time be, Sam? This would be a little bit different today.
Normally, we would be reading your mail, right? So we would be looking at emails you send in about the course, about questions that you have, things that you're learning about, studying about. My big thing, what I think about this class is it's really hard to just sort of memorize all these little discrete pieces of information, but thinking about how things tie together. So if you have questions about as you're piecing things together, email us. Anything you encounter, any questions you have, this is our chance to be interactive. So email us at cgehrz@bethel.edu.
You want to try spelling that?
CGEHRZ@bethel.edu.
Fantastic. And S-Mulberry, that's S-MULBERRY @bethel.edu. So we'll read your mail if we like it. Don't send us bad mail. No.
But if we're desperate for mail, will we read the bad mail?
Yes, we will. There's no bad mail. If you have questions, we might not read all in there. We will also answer it via email. But chances are, as I always say in my small groups, don't feel awkward asking a question. If you ask it, chances are very good half the class has the same question. And so, that especially those are the ones we want to talk about here in the webisodes. So we'll be doing the webisodes every about 3 or 4 days or so, bridging around weekends. So usually about 2 a unit.
Is it going to get better than this?
How could it possibly get better than this?
I think this has gone pretty well.
I think so too.
So thank you for watching CWC PTI. We'll be back again soon.
And good night, Sweden.